Hi, my name is Caitlin Landry. I'm a homeschool mom here in Texas, and we are making this video for you today to talk about school choice and what that looks like for us potentially in the state of Texas.
And my name is Jennifer Garza. I'm also a homeschool mother, but I was a public school teacher for 5 years before I decided to stay home. Seeing this whole school choice stuff come up in other states has gotten me very concerned about what's going on. So Caitlin and I together started Texans Against School Choice. As a disclaimer, Caitlin and I have not been on camera before. We have no experience doing videos, honestly, but it is so important of a topic to us that we really feel like we needed to step out of our comfort zone and go ahead and do an explanation video.
So we're going to start out by answering the question, what is school choice? It can look different from state to state. So we're talking about here in Texas and what it might look like in the legislation that is likely to be introduced this upcoming legislative session starting in January.
There are some key words, though, that do pop up a lot of times
Yes.
when people are talking about school choice, because different states call it different things and people don't think that we're talking about the same thing as what's going on.
Right. So one of those is vouchers. Vouchers are government funded scholarships for private schools. There's also education savings accounts, also termed ESAs. They are government funded debit accounts that can be used for educational expenses like tuition, curriculum, even homeschool supplies. Basically, any money following the child legislation is what we are concerned about. Here in Texas, there are not currently any school choice laws, but it will be a hot topic in our upcoming legislative session.
So why are we opposed to school choice? So choice isn't actually the correct word. I think that everyone thinks that our government is hoping to do, because we actually already do have choice here in Texas. We have a lot of freedom in how we want to educate our children as we see fit. What we were really against is the government funding non-public school education choices, such as our private schools and our homeschools. So with these possible legislations, there are some concerns. Those are funding would introduce government strings that we currently don't have. There's also tax and monetary implications. Tax rates can go up. And also data mining concerns with our children's information, where that might be available out to some third-party company.
So let's talk about the potential government strings with school choice legislation. What the government funds, the government runs, which we've seen time and time again throughout history and even in the past 2.5 years in our country. And in talking about school choice, Governor Abbott, Texas's governor, in a press conference a few weeks ago, he even admitted that state funds come with accountability to the state. He even gave an inaccurate stereotype of homeschoolers to help make his point about accountability being needed. We don't know what that accountability will look like yet. It could be in the form of assessments like standardized testing, curriculum or religion oversight in homeschools or private schools, government influence over admission processes, even having to register with the state in the first place. In Texas, we are so free to homeschool, and we don't even have to notify the state right now that if we do homeschool, we don't have to register or notify them. And so the introduction of any kind of string or regulation to us would be a negative thing and would be taking away freedoms that we currently enjoy.
And just in case you were interested, we'll post a link to Governor Abbott's press conference so that you can view for yourself what he has said. People have asked, can't you just opt out if you don't like it? Well, it really depends on how they draft a bill, but to give you a few examples, in Indiana, if a private school takes any type of voucher student, the whole school now has to take the standardized test, where that didn't happen before. In Ohio, voucher students have to take the state test, and if 65% of the whole private school's population are using the vouchers, the whole school now has to take the test as well. So in these states, even families who aren't opting in to the funds are affected.
Yep. So just to kind of continue on why an opt-out clause in the legislation still wouldn't be ideal for us is the idea of a slippery slope. The slippery slope is not a fallacy. It does happen. And just to give an example, let's say that one of the accountability conditions for homeschoolers or private schoolers to take this money, whether they're in the form of an ESA or a voucher, is that they have to administer a state-approved standardized test. And let's say some of those students test poorly. Can't you just see the headlines already? Homeschoolers, parochial students fail to meet state testing requirements, leading to more oversight to ensure quality educations. We all know that standardized tests are a joke and aren't a true measure of intellect or knowledge, but the government operates like they are and would absolutely take that opportunity to enforce oversight.
Well, the whole reason why they started the state tests to begin with was to make sure that our students were following and they could get the money for the public schools, and then that puts so much stress on those poor children.
Yes, to touch on the tax and monetary implications, one of our concerns is that tuition prices would increase with the introduction of these government funds. We saw it on the university setting. I think this is probably kind of fresh in everyone's mind with the student loan forgiveness. The university tuition started going up when the government started subsidizing education, and people couldn't afford tuition even with that money, and so they were taking out loans, and it just had this snowball effect, and we are where we are now. And it likely wouldn't be any different with this scenario. Also, another concern in this realm is that the actual funds given to the families will likely be a lot more than what they actually pay in school taxes. To give an example, in 2016, there was a voucher proposal for the state, and they wanted to give each student $5,000 per year. And let's say I paid $3,000 in school taxes that year, but I have 3 children, and so I would be getting $15,000 a year for that money. And so you can see the discrepancy there. How is that a sustainable method without eventually raising taxes to help cover that difference?
And then also tax and monetary implications. It can also happen with our public schools. With these children getting pulled out now to be able to go to private schools and possibly even being more homeschooled, it's gonna have less money in the public school budget. It may not result in less teachers, but it could result in having less electives, less dual credit for students, and eventually those taxes are going to have to be raised up to cover the difference. What about those homes without school-age children? I know that one's very close to my heart because both my parents, they own homes and they haven't had a child in public school for over 20 years, and they're paying school taxes. So people often ask us, but why don't we want that money back since we pay for the public schools through our property taxes, even though our kids don't go to public school? Well, the answer is that we don't want it back from the government. What we really is we would like to keep our money in the first place. But that's a whole different topic. That's actually tax reform, and that needs to be kept separate from education reform. Right now, we're just trying to fight the education reform, and we are hoping to eventually go back to fighting and getting a tax reform. So our next concern is data mining. If there's like an ESA or some type of something like that, program, they're going to these kids are going to have what they call a digital backpack of sorts, and that's going to have a bunch of the kids' personal information on there.
Yeah, they're going to have a database or technological infrastructure built to have the money follow the child.
Yeah, and there is one example. It's the Mo Scholar.
Yes, in Missouri.
Yeah.
So Missouri has a new ESA scholarship that they are rolling out, and their state treasurer will have each child's name and address, grade level, gender, family income level, and race for reporting purposes. And
isn't that also the state that now anyone that lives in that household is under the age of 18?
Over the age of 18.
Over the age of 18, they have to get a background check, right?
Yes, in order for them to be able to participate in the program and get the funds, every adult in the house has to have a background check.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah, I mean, grandparents, other children, like just. Yeah, we don't want any part of that here. And then also they are going to continue to follow the child past graduation, or even if they leave the program,
just so they can see how it affects. But if you look at it from the other way, that information being out there with those statistics, it's just not a good thing.
No.
What about the families or schools who participate? What do they have to do in order to receive that money?
Yeah, what are they going to have to do to receive the funds in the first place? Will households without school-aged children get some kind of tax refund too? Because one of the arguments in favor of school choice is that it's only fair to be paid back for a system that you're not utilizing. But the ones that don't have school-aged children and aren't going to a private school or homeschool, are they going to get their money back?
Who knows? Also, will tax increase if or when the budget shortfalls at the public school system happens because those funding goes to somewhere else?
Right. And we talked about the discrepancy in what people actually pay in their school taxes versus the funds that they're getting. Will taxes increase to cover all of the participating families?
Yeah, because they're going to end up receiving more than what we paid into taxes. So for households with multiple children, they're going to get quite a bit more.
Money.
What about those students who receive the money to leave the public school system, but they don't have access to a private school because they might not live near one, they aren't admitted because of the private school standards, or they just can't afford the difference between the funding that they receive and what the actual tuition cost is?
Right. Money does not automatically equal access.
Yes.
Ultimately, if this were to pass, how will homeschoolers and private schools be protected from the inevitable overreach? When we ask these questions to lawmakers and the school choice advocates, they don't have good answers. I have yet to get an answer. It's either crickets or it's don't miss the forest for the trees, or don't make perfect the enemy of good. And they can't answer the questions, and that's really concerning.
Yeah, that's obviously an issue because they don't have an answer. That means that none of these kinks are worked out, and they're going to just try to implement a system and hope it works. Again, to clarify, this is not an issue that the public will get to vote on. What's going to happen is it'll go directly into our state government. So we need to speak out now about what we...
Yeah, the legislators who we elect are the ones who will be voting on it. And so we really need to make our voices heard now about our concerns, get answers to our questions, hopefully convince them to represent us well.
So if you are interested in joining us in our fight against school choice, please join our Facebook group, Texans Against School Choice, or you can email us at texansagainstschoolchoice@gmail.com. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.